It's a joy always to be with you. And I want to start by just offering gratitude for you, Mark, for holding this space for us. And Rachel, to you also, thank you. And for IJS at large for creating this space of spaciousness for us. And so we're going to just begin with a melody. And the invitation is just to sit back and allow this to flow over you. Min hametzar karatia. Min hametzar karatia. Min hametzar karatia. Karatia. Min hametzar. Whoa, Anani, 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 Karatia min hametza. I'm going to share a poem from Amnon Ribach, and it's called Every Person Needs an Egypt. Everyone should have some kind of Egypt in their lives, to find Moses within themselves, to struggle out and strive, to have to fight with a hand of might or with gritted teeth to seek the light, to walk through darkness and survive. Everyone should have some kind of Egypt in their past, the dream, the dread, the bond, the hand that they can always trust. To learn to cast their sore eyes heavenward. Every person needs a prayer, one to know by heart. Every person should, for once at least, be bowed. Everyone should have a shoulder to lean on in the crowd. Everyone should have some kind of Egypt in their gears, to go forth at the mid of night into the desert of their fears, redeem themselves from a house of bondage, march straight into the sea, and see the waters part before them, as if by decree. Everyone should have a shoulder calm and firm and strong, on which to carry through the desert the remains of Joseph's bones. Everyone once bowed should walk tall and free and proud. Everyone should have some kind of Egypt cross their ways, and Jerusalem in their prayers, and a journey long and hard to remember in their heart and with their feet until the end of days. So I'd like to begin our teaching section today with a small but possibly demanding spiritual question. And it deals with the maror, with the bitterness. So how do we tell truth about bitterness without letting bitterness become our home? What sparked this question for me is that there's a story about the Kotzker Rebbe at the Seder table. And apparently in the middle of a Seder one year, he cries out these words, Maror fressers, which is eaters of bitterness. And whether we hear that as a cry to heaven, a cry over the suffering of the Jewish people, or as a challenge to those around the table, that phrase lands with force. And the questions that it leaves me with are, when we're surrounded by bitterness, how do we not become gluttons of bitterness? What can we do to balance our spiritual meals so that we're not binge eating maror? Because bitterness is real. The maror in our everyday lives is not imaginary. Pain is real. Disappointment is real. Grief, betrayal, weariness, these are all real. And I don't think that the Kutzker, because he was very invested in clarity and truth, I don't think he's asking us to create a false sense of sweetness within ourselves. We're not asked to skip over the sorrow or deny what hurts, but there's a difference between tasting bitterness and dwelling in it. And that's where I think this teaching can open up for us. So at a Seder, we have maror on the Seder plate, and it has a place. We bless, we taste, we remember. We even dip it in salt water. Some people dip in vinegar, making it even more acrid. But the maror is not the whole meal. So Judaism doesn't ask us to erase pain, but it also does not invite us to build a permanent home inside of it. And many of us know how easy it is to become, spiritually speaking, maror eaters. We replay a wound. We rehearse a grievance. We revisit over and over again a conversation. We keep feeding the bitter herb long after a moment has passed. And sometimes the pain is fresh. Sometimes it is ancient. Sometimes it even begins to feel like an identity. This is who I am, the one who was hurt, the one who was overlooked, the one who carries the hard story. But the Kutzker's cry comes to interrupt that trance. It doesn't tell us not to feel or not to grieve or to pretend that everything is fine, but rather asks us not to make bitterness our nourishment, not to let it become the habit of our souls, not to confuse lucidity with fixation. It tells us don't imagine that because something is painful, it deserves endless room inside of you. Complaint and praise belong in the same spiritual life. And we don't have to choose between honesty and gratitude. A mature soul can hold both of these things simultaneously. When we invite clarity into our space, we can see that the opposite of bitterness is not cheerfulness. Maybe it's spaciousness. And in our story of Passover, a story of constriction, of bondage, of slavery, that seems perfectly suited. We have the capacity to say this hurts, this matters, this is bitter. And still, it is not all that there is. It's not all that's here right now. There's also the breath. There's also the body sitting here. And there's the fact of being alive today. We have companionship and holiness and the possibility of what has tightened within us becoming soft. So we can refuse to dwell solely in bitterness, and that's not denial, it's freedom. We can refuse to let pain become the only lens through which we see the world. We can refuse to let the wound become the center of the self. We can practice remembering that bitterness may visit us, but it doesn't need to rule us. So the invitation today for this meditation is very simple. just to notice where bitterness, where that maror lives in you, if it's here today, and to not push it away, but also not to feed it. Just let it be known, held, breathed, and we can taste it without becoming it. And perhaps this is one meaning of liberation, where maror doesn't need to become the entire story. So the invitation now is to just take your seat and let your body arrive and feel the support beneath you, allowing the spine to rise easily, and let the jaw soften, allowing the hands to rest. You can let your eyes come to a soft focus, just a couple of feet in front of you, or allow them to close gently. Without controlling or changing, just notice the natural rhythm of the breath. And just sitting for a few cycles of breath in awareness of body and awareness of breath. And now, very gently, just notice if there's any bitterness here today. And if you experience any bitterness, it doesn't have to be the whole story, just a felt sense. And the invitation now is to just investigate if you've encountered any bitterness as we sit here today. Where does it live in the body? Perhaps it's in the throat, the chest, the belly, behind the eyes, in the head space. And there's no need to analyze or justify, and we don't need to make it go away. Just allowing for acknowledgement in this moment. Breathing in, make a little room. Breathing out, soften around any bitterness. Again, breathing in and making room, and breathing out, softening the grip. Allowing the maror, if it's there, just to be one guest in the room and not to draw all of the attention to itself. Let the breath remind you there is more here than pain. Let the body remind you you are larger than the story that you are carrying. And with the next few breaths, let's just simply sit with a quiet inner gesture. I can meet this without feeding it. And now the invitation is to even let words fall away as we sit together in silence. And if the mind should return to a bitter place or a place of distraction, just notice it gently and come back to the breath, the body, and a sense of abiding in awareness. I'll bring us out of silence with a bell in a few minutes. Min Hametzar Karatia. Min Hametzar Karatia. Min Hametzar Karatia Min Hametzar Whoa, Nani Anani, whoa, Anani, Karatia min hametza. I'm going to close with a poem by Langston Hughes. It's called Mother to Son. Well, son, I tell you, life for me ain't been no crystal stair. It's had tacks in it and splinters and boards torn up and places with no carpet on the floor, bare. But all the time I've been climbing on and reaching landings and turning corners and some things and sometimes going in the dark when there ain't been no light. So boy, don't you turn back. Don't you sit down on the steps because you find it's kind of hard. Don't you fall now, for I'm still going, honey. I'm still climbing, and life ain't been no crystal stair. Thank you, everyone, so much for your presence today.
Thank you, Kerith, so much. As always, let's seal that beautiful practice, friends, with an opportunity. Those of you who are in mourning, those who are observing Yortsites, to recite the Mourner's Kaddish. If you're not reciting Kaddish, as always, please stay present to support those who are. And you can put the name or names of anyone you're honoring today in the chat now or after you recite Kaddish. And invite you, if you're doing so, to join me by rising in body or in spirit as we elevate the souls of remembering today with Mourner's Kaddish. You can unmute it this time. Yitgadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabbah, Yamad, Yitgashtei, Ishmei Rabam Barach, Rabam Me Amaya, Dar Lal Shmei Elan Mukolter Tavish Aman Maya Maliu Yisrael Imru Shalom Amen. Friends, thanks so much for joining us today. We hope to stay with us, as always, for a few minutes of conversation with our teacher, Cantor Kerith, Spencer-Shapiro, or to share reflections in the chat about your practice. And if you're leaving us now, I hope you'll join us tomorrow. We'll be led by Rabbi Benjamin Ross tomorrow, and I'll be leading our sit together into Shabbat this Friday as well. So we hope to see you either or both of those. And thanks to Rachel Huget for holding our tech space, as always, faithfully and skillfully. If you do have a question for Cantor Kerith, please put it in the chat. And as always, if you would preface it by writing a question, all in caps, I'll keep an eye out, try to work your question into the conversation. First of all, Kerith, thank you for saving me, because in the event that I agitated people or instigated panic among some by mentioning that we were a week out from Pesach. Some people might have been a little freaked out by that. Um, but as you did so beautifully, it's just a great opportunity to begin to kind of, um, have some appetizers, right, for the Seder and for
Mhm.
Passover. And I don't know that it's good. This is a joke. I don't know if I would start with the maror as the appetizer, but
Right.
I'm just kidding. Maror is really the right one to start with this year.
Hmm.
So I want to thank you. I thought it was just so helpful. You know what? Maror is, first of all, I love that story about the Kotzker Rebbe, um, warning everyone about binge eating maror, which is exact, as you pointed out, pretty much what we're doing these days.
Yeah.
The maror of social media, the maror of the news, the maror of internal division, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And
And
so
it's real,
appreciate
like not to say that
real.
it's not there, right?
Oh, totally. And I
Yeah.
think that was the beauty of it. So it struck me as I was sitting and you were beautifully describing how it's real and we can honor it and there's a reason we eat it. You know, there is a role for maror. It's one of the three, Rabban Gamliel says it's one of the three things it's an essential element of the Seder.
Yeah.
But then it's followed, right? In the Seder, we have maror, and then korech, which is the Hillel sandwich, where you take the
Hmm.
maror and you kind of, uh, I don't know, dilute the bitterness a little bit, right? With matzah
Hmm.
and we do with choroseh, right? Some
Yep.
sweetness. So there's a sweetness, sweet and sour sandwich, matzah sandwich.
Hmm.
And then Shulchan Orech. And when we sing that little
Yeah.
ditty, to remind us of the steps of the Seder, it's Maror, Korech, Shulchan Orech. So I was really
Hmm.
thinking that was such what we did today was like a great kind of flow that you took us through from that bite of Maror, and then gradually kind of in expanding the zone in which that maror exists, that includes all the other flavors, the
Yeah.
sweetness, the matzah, and whatever's on the menu for the meal. So thank you for that. It was great. I mean, it really kind of changed that whole part of the Seder for me.
Thanks, Mark.
Um, what would you say to people who are just stuck in it?
Yeah.
Who are like, yes, I mean, I think many of us could agree, yes, I need to make more space, but one might say we can get addicted to it, right? Even though you say, how can you get addicted to my roar? It's so unpleasant, right?
Yeah.
But you can get addicted to many unpleasant things. Um,
Absolutely.
so how do we get out of that
Yeah.
cycle?
I think that, I think that, I think what we're called to notice um, is that it's not the only thing. And
Mhm.
and the trap is only residing there, right? And I think if we start to shame ourselves, like on the other hand, right, if we start to shame ourselves about noticing the bitterness in our
Mhm.
world, which is really overwhelming right now, um, then we're adding more bitterness, right? When we add shame to that mix.
Mhm.
So I think the invitation here is not to push it away, not to pretend it doesn't exist, or to say I'm a bad person for noticing all the bitterness in the world. But when we find ourselves in those loops, in the bitterness loop, just to take a breath and say, yes, bitterness is here, but what else is residing here in this moment? And the easiest thing to start with is breath is here.
Mhm.
So I think, and I hope this isn't oversharing. When I was a younger person, I used to suffer from really intense panic attacks. And so this living in that bitterness is something that is very
Hmm.
real to me and experienced, and that loop is incredibly powerful and very difficult to break. And we have the ability to break it. We can break that chain, and just by noticing other pieces, noticing that along with the maror, there are other things that exist there. And maybe it's not even inviting, noticing something pleasant, just noticing something completely flat without any value attached to it. There's a chair here.
Hmm.
And that can even
Yeah.
just break the cycle, just to allow for that story not to be everything. But it takes so much, and I say that, oh, just right, but it takes real dedication, real practice. And I think that it's one of the things, it's honestly, for me, breaking that cycle for myself of anxiety attacks was the
Hmm.
reason that I started really investing heavily in my meditation practice. So it's an incredibly powerful practice,
Hmm.
and I think it takes a lot of work too. So yeah,
Thank you. I didn't consider that oversharing. I really appreciate,
okay,
your
good.
honesty with that. And it's just between us and the other 118 people here. And I'm sure many of us can relate to that. I was just, as I was listening to you describe that, I was thinking, um, and also keeping an eye on the chat, that there's kind of there's an element that can be linked to trauma, right? That locks us in. And so what you
Hmm.
were describing about what to do in that moment when we become dysregulated,
Hmm.
about, as you said, just looking around the room, realizing I'm safe, there's a chair, I'm here, touch,
Yeah.
the body, et cetera, all those tips for what to do when we're dysregulated, either by freezing or by overly, by freaking out and
Hmm.
getting overly agitated in some way. So there's that. And then someone mentioned, it's interesting, Patricia mentioned the negative bias predisposes us to identify with bitterness as a defense or a means of control, which is very interesting also. That is,
Hmm.
that it serves a function, and if it serves a function of defending us, then that's another way of honoring it. It's not that because we have a judgment, bitter is bad. It's bad to be bitter,
Right.
right? But if we frame it a little bit differently, sometimes bitterness actually is a way of protecting ourselves. And if we can give ourselves that nurture to
Yeah.
say, but kind of like you were just saying, to feel like I'm safe right now, then that loosens the hold of the bitterness, which leads
Right.
to people were asking, what were you singing? And you were singing, um, someone put the English translation, Min HaMetzar Karatiya, which is from Hallel, from the Psalms that we sing. It's in the liturgy it's in the Haggadah, in the Hallel.
Hmm.
Um, from the narrow place I called out, and the Holy One answered me. So that kind of like that, how do we get out of the constriction, which including the constriction of bitterness, by honoring it and then allowing
Yeah.
it to kind of open. I was going to ask you about the melody. Whose melody is that? Do you know?
Yeah. Okay. So this is a melody. I want to say that I learned
Beautiful.
this. Thank you. It's super important for me to share that I learned this melody from my student, almost Rabbi Tori Green,
Okay.
who sang it recently at her capstone concert here at Pico Union Project in Los Angeles. And the melody was written by Julia Sabra and Amalia Kelter Zeitlin. And
Thanks
I,
for
I
sharing that.
don't know if it's recorded or written down anywhere. I learned it
Well, now it's
from
recorded.
oral
Recorded right.
transmission. So
I mean, it's not studio quality yet, but we'll get
yeah,
there. It was beautiful. I should mention, by the way, Cantor Kerith, what's your official role at Hebrew
yeah,
Union College Jewish Institute of Religion in LA? Supervises the student, rabbinical and cantorial students in their prayer leadership. Yeah, did I got that right?
yes, I'm Rosh Tefillah
Yeah.
and Campus Cantor.
There
Yeah.
you go. Great. They're
Mm-hmm.
very blessed to have you
Thank you.
be under your wing there. Um, so we have about 5 minutes, Kara. So I wanted to actually to shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit
Yeah.
about your offerings and specifically lift up this since it's seasonal and like right on point here. Um, this Surat Omer counting calendar that you've got and what you're doing. And Rachel hopefully can share some of the links to these people might want to check out. So tell us
Yeah.
about what you're doing.
Yeah. So the Omer counting calendar is really just a tool. It's a very simple tool. It's you can get it in either PDF, PNG, or JPEG format, but it really just lists the day of the Omer and for that evening, the blessing that is to be said and the midot that are associated with it. And it has the midot in Hebrew, but also gives you an idea of what those qualities are in English. So, if you are feeling stuck in Maror right now, the exploring daily these midot is a really nice way to notice, have the take the time, a beautiful spiritual practice to notice other qualities that exist, and so and we can make judgments for ourselves about how we want to invite those divine qualities to reside within ourselves as well.
Beautiful.
Um,
It looks
yeah,
beautiful.
thank you.
And it's a great
Yeah.
offering. Um,
Thanks. And people
so
can
all those,
access it either directly through Etsy if you just want the Omer counter. And I have a Patreon page where there are recorded and written meditations monthly. And any Patreon supporter at any level, and I think it's $5 a month and above, gets that as a gift. So
thanks.
yeah.
Um, and I want to review the first poem you read, what's his name? Reebok? Aram Reebok. Anyway, it was that first poem that you shared at the opening, which is on the source sheet, by the way, and everyone has the source sheet, uh, is just a great reminder of all the ways that all the characters of the Passover story and all the elements of the Seder, yes, they're actually literal. Well, we can think of them literally, but we also can think of them metaphorically or even as representative of energies that live within us. So I wanted to
Yeah.
really also thank you for lifting that up because that is the goal really of the Seder is to remember that, oh, this Moshe character, did he really live? Did this really happen?
Right.
Um, the real question is, can I access the Moshe within me, right? Or
Right.
can I notice the Pharaoh within me? Can I
Yeah.
notice the my Lord within me? Which is exactly what we're doing now. So actually, I didn't give you a heads up on this, Kerith, but that Minha Mitzar was so beautiful. If you don't mind taking us out with it, that would be great.
I
You
would
okay with
I
that?
would love to. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Min hametzar karatia. Min hametzar karatia. Min hametzar karatia min hametzar anani 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 Karatia min hametzah. It's a reason to get to Hallel.
Yeah, and then, people don't always get the Hallel. That is true. Thank you. That's an excellent. So Lauren puts in, please record it for YouTube. Well, probably a more professional recording. However, that recording now lives on YouTube since we stream on YouTube. So if you'd like to revisit Cantor Kerith singing that, you can catch it on the IJS YouTube channel. You can rewatch today's session. Thanks, Rachel. As always, being right on top of it, right there. So please check it out. Let that melody wash over you today and throughout the rest of Nisan and into Passover. And Kerith, as always, real blessing to get to sit and practice with you. Thank you so much. And
Likewise.
wishing thanks. Chag Sameach to you and to everyone. And if you actually have maybe if leave the chat open for just a minute, if you can, if the name of the people who composed if you can put
Yeah,
that in, that'd be great.
will do. I'm just
Thank
going
you.
to grab it off of another doc and
Okay,
put it
thanks.
right on here.
Great. So let's make sure that we credit appropriately there.
Thank you. And, oh,
And while Kerith's
darn
doing
it.
that, just to
Sorry.
remind, that's okay. And just
Okay.
remind everyone to join us if you can tomorrow to practice with Rabbi Benjamin Ross and or on Friday. Next week, because of Passover, we will be meeting live on Monday and Tuesday, but not on Wednesday, Erev Pesach. Everyone will be in transit. And yeah, thanks for that, Kerith. Appreciate it. And so next week, of course, we will not be meeting on the first 2 days of Pesach, and then the following week on the seventh and eighth days of Pesach for those who observe both days. And thanks again to everyone. Many blessings to you all.